Sentire Media.
Ciao a tutti and welcome to Venice Talks, a podcast series dedicated to Venice in Italy. I'm your host, Monica Cesarato, a Venetian food and travel blogger. Join me as I share my insider knowledge to help you explore Venice at 360 degrees. In this weekly podcast, we'll dive into the heart of a city, uncovering hidden stories and connecting with the people who make Venice unique. The artisans, the writers, the fashion designers, the bloggers, the journalists, and more. Let's break free from cliché and discover the true essence of Venice, not just the monuments, but the vibrant people, the Venetians. Experience Venice the right sustainable way. You can find me on my blog at www.monicacesarato.com and across all social media platforms. Enjoy the episode and let's journey through Venice together. Welcome back to Venice Talks, Season 2, Episode 25. Hi everybody and welcome back to Venice Talks. Another hot day here in Venice, and today I have the pleasure of talking to David Hewson. Hi David, how are you?
Buongiorno, Monica. I'm fine. I'm in England where it's not hot and sunny. It's medium hot and rainy, but
just a typical day. Just a typical day in the UK. Yes.
Yeah, I was in Venice until yesterday, and it was lovely and actually very hot, but it's quite different here. Yeah.
Let's redefine the word "lovely" for Venice when it's.
I know you all hate agosto, but it doesn't bother me being English. You know, Englishmen go out in midday sun and things like that.
I know. Well, but that's only because you come here for a few days. Once you start having it for 3 months in a row, never rain, it's hard, trust me. These days, you're sitting down and you're literally melting on the chair.
Yes.
Anyway, well, first of all, let's explain who David Hewson is, because I know you're over the internet, you got your own Wikipedia, that it's my aspiration one day to have my own Wikipedia page.
Okay. I didn't do that. Somebody else did that. I have no idea.
But you still are. You're one of a very famous novelist from England, but from UK. But let's explain who you are first, and then let's talk about the project that's why I'm calling you on for.
Okay. Well, originally I was a journalist. I worked for the Times and the Sunday Times, but I always wanted to write books. Mm-hmm. So I started writing fiction. And eventually, 20 odd years ago, I was still a journalist and I came on an assignment to Venice and stayed in the old Hotel des Bains, which was still going back then. Mm-hmm. It's more about 25 years ago. The assignment I was on was so boring. I just walked out and hopped on a boat. Mm-hmm. I still had one book left in my then publishing contract. I didn't know what I wanted to write. Mm-hmm. I found myself lost in Venice, and it immediately grabbed hold of me somehow. So I spent the next year going backwards and forwards to Venice, writing a book called Lucifer's Shadow, mm-hmm. Which is partly set in the time of Vivaldi and partly set in modern times. Uh-huh. I've been kind of hooked ever since, really. So I think I've written 6 or 7 Venice books now, the most recent being the Borgia Portrait, and before that, the Medici Murders, and then before that, probably the book that took me 3 years called The Garden of Angels, which is partly set in the city during the Nazi occupation. So I've covered a lot of bright and a lot of dark stuff over the years.
So how do you get on about finding the information about the city? Because of course, there's a lot, of course, of works in Italian. There's a lot of history books. There's a lot of, material available in Italian. But how do you get on about finding the materials in English? Let's say, but I find that authentic, because I find sometimes that when you see things from the outside, maybe you miss on certain things from
sometimes you read stuff that's total rubbish. People come here for 3 days and
okay, thank you, you said what I didn't want to say.
It can be quite embarrassing. Two things. First of all, I was a journalist for 20 years, so research is kind of part of part of my experience. But also when I started to write books, I did a long course in Italian in Rome. So I speak a bit of Italian. I read a bit of Italian. Okay. And, when you're writing a book that involves research, the important thing is to focus on the research you need, not try to learn everything. So
Yes.
for the Garden of Angels, it was fascinating. In that, there's Iveza, I think, which is the organization on Giudecca that.
Oh, even that. Yes,
So,
that I've
yeah,
interviewed. Yes, a couple of
yeah,
times. Yes.
yeah. I mean, you could access their library
Yes.
online and read verbatim accounts of what people went through during
Yes.
the Nazi occupation, and I mean that was absolutely invaluable for that
Mm-hmm.
book. Um, the Medici murders is in part about the assassination of Lorenzino de' Medici,
Yes.
which is one of the subjects that we'll be talking about at Venice Noir.
Mm-hmm.
There are quite good history books in that, including one by a local academic, Stefano Dall'Aglio, which
Mm-hmm.
and Stefano did this amazing piece of Sherlock Holmes style research that completely changed the way everybody saw that particular murder.
Oh, okay.
So there's a lot of material around, but you have to go for the stuff that's accurate and real, not just pull stuff off a Wikipedia page or
Exactly,
um,
exactly. And also, I think one very important thing that I noticed, and that's why there are certain authors like you, like Philip, and others that I particularly like when you write about Venice. That yes, obviously you're not Venetian, so you're writing always with with your culture, but you understand the Venetian culture. That is a bit different with the Italian cultures, okay? And I find other people write thinking in their own culture. So the characters were supposed to be Venetians. They behave like maybe a foreigner would, not as
yeah.
a local would. And that's what I find hard to digest when I read certain books. You understand what I'm trying to say.
Well, I mean, the cliche is always very easy, but I spend a lot of time in Venice. I normally
Yeah.
spend 4 weeks, 6 weeks a year there.
Mm-hmm.
I've got lots of friends there. So I've got access to sources of information. And Gregory Dowling, of course,
Yes.
is the most generous provider of local advice and has saved my life a couple of times when I've written something and got it horribly wrong. And Gregory, in his own uniquely polite way, will point out that.
Yeah, he's very. I
Um,
love Gregory. He's got his
yeah,
own
yeah.
very
So
phlegmatic,
it's a
very
question of
calm
your
way.
approach to it, and I think. I mean, there are writers who will literally come in and spend a week in a place, then go away and write it as if they know about it. And,
I
I've
know.
been coming to Venice now for over 30 years. And, as they say in Rome, non basta una vita. One lifetime is not,
Yeah.
one lifetime really isn't enough. I mean, every time I go back, I've found something new that's amazed me. So I'm not sure it's a place you ever fully get to know. It's a place that you're always exploring.
And only that, since you've been coming for so many years, it has evolved and it's changed so much, so fast in the last 20 years, I think. I mean, me as a local, I see that. So I can imagine also when you come from abroad and you come, you come for like 4 weeks, you can really see the changes. I think even
Yeah.
in the people themselves. I mean, I remember I lived in England for many years and then I came back and I came back about it was 99. And I remember the Venice that I found when I came back wasn't the Venice that I left 12 years before. It was different. The people were different, and every
Yeah.
year is the same. So,
Very much so. I mean,
how hard
I
is
wrote 10 books set in Rome, and I spent a lot of time in Rome before I started coming to Venice regularly. And my Roman friends, like 20 years ago, would say, "Why are you going to Venice? The food's terrible and the people are miserable." Um, and actually, the food wasn't great 20 years ago. And I remember when I first came here, I mean, the place closed down around 8 o'clock at night. I stayed near
I
Villa
know.
Garibaldi, which is now this huge, busy tourist thoroughfare. But I have to tell you, 25 years ago, 8 o'clock at night, there was maybe one restaurant open, and that was it.
I know. That's when I start writing about Venice and the food because I start writing about it exactly because people kept saying to me that the food was horrible. And I keep thinking, no, when I go to Venice, I eat well. And then I realized there were two different ways of eating for us locals and for the tourists. And
Mm.
then that's when I start writing about it. So yeah, I totally get you. I totally get you.
But
Listen,
it's become much more international, hasn't it? Because 20, 25 years ago.
Oh, it was impossible to find a Chinese restaurant or kebab and stuff like that. Yes, I
But I mean,
totally
not
agree.
just that, every restaurant had basically the same menu.
Yes,
It was the same bunch of dishes, the
yeah,
frigato. Everything was exactly the same.
yeah,
Whereas now, I mean, I went into Al Perfetto on Sunday, which is
yes,
my favorite restaurants, and I had a sea bass there that had spices on it and a sauce that was made with, I think it was fennel and licorice and lime or something. I mean, it was very sophisticated food. It's absolutely
yes.
beautiful. You would not have got that 20 years ago.
No, no, no. He has changed. I think he's a new generation of chef, and also awareness of that, in a way, one good thing that the internet has done has forced, I think, the local restaurant to understand that if they want to, for people to go back or even for people to arrive, they need to provide good food, and
Mhm.
that's helped. That's one of the good things of internet, amongst all the bad things that were done to Venice thanks to the internet. But before we go back to your books and so on, let's talk a little bit about Venice Noir. So I remember, I think about must have been 2, 3 years ago, maybe during an interview with Philip Gwyn Jones, we talked about this, and I said, "When are you gonna hold a book festival in Venice?" And he said to me, "I really would love to do something like that." And then I never heard anything. Next thing you know, he's posting that you're having this festival. So how did the idea come about?
Um, I guess we're a bit crazy, really. But 2 years ago, in conjunction with a wonderful Studium bookstore
Yes.
in San Marco behind the Doge's Palace,
Mm-hmm.
Philip, Gregory, and I just had an evening where we invited people in to talk about books. So many people turned up, they couldn't get in. It filled
Mm-hmm.
the bookstore. So the following year, we had it in the English church, and Tom Benjamin, who writes books set in Bologna, came along. And again, we had a really, really big turnout. And Sylvia of Studium
Mm-hmm.
turned to me in January or so and said, "Well, what are we going to do this autumn?" And like an idiot, I said, "I think we should do something much bigger and try and start a festival."
That's not like an
I
idiot. That's
guess
a
it's
great
changed,
idea. It's about time something like that
uh,
happened in Venice.
I'm not realizing how much work it is. So this
Ah,
year
okay.
is quite, we're starting off with kind of a soft launch. So this
Yes.
year, we have proper premises, Sant'Apollonia, I think I said that right next to, just behind the Bridge of Sighs, very close
Yes.
to the Studium. And it's got proper AV facilities. And this year we're going to make it free. So
Mm-hmm.
anybody can turn up. It'd be great if you could go to venicenoir.com and just register your interest because there are things that will be coming along you probably want to know about.
Mm-hmm.
It's all free. It's 3 sessions, and it's a testing of the water. We announced this a few weeks back, and shortly afterwards, I went to the Harrogate Festival, where I was appearing there, which is like the biggest crime festival in the world. I think they sold
Mm-hmm.
15,000 tickets. And I was inundated with authors saying to me, "I want to come to Venice. I want to be part of Venice." So I have a huge list of big name authors wanted to come in 2025. So
Cool.
after we've got this one out of the way, which is a simple 1 day event,
Mm-hmm.
what we hope to do is to turn it into a multi-day event that will be a
Nice.
regular fixture in the Venetian cultural calendar. And this year is solely English language, although we have
Mm-hmm.
an Italian author Matteo Struckel in there. But next year will be English and Italian and
Mm.
much bigger. And, we have to, once we've got this one out the way, we have to sit down and work out how we're going to do that and where and how. But I have been absolutely amazed and inundated with really big name international authors saying to me, "I want to be in Venice for Venice Noir in 2025." So
Cool.
watch
So
this space.
who's coming this year? So who are the
Yeah.
authors are gonna be and who's gonna be presenting and everything?
Right. This year we have 3 sessions and they're very different sessions. I'm opening up with a session which I'm chairing, which is about that assassination I
Mm-hmm.
mentioned, Lorenzino de' Medici, who
Mm-hmm.
was stalked and murdered on the Ponte Santa Mar in 1548. And it's a fascinating story because he was stalked and murdered because 11 years earlier he murdered his own cousin, the
Mm-hmm.
Duke of Tuscany, in Florence.
Mm-hmm.
And to discuss that, we have Catherine Fletcher, who's one of our great historians here and an expert and the author of lots of really readable books on Italian history. Her latest one is about the roads that lead to Rome. Before that, she wrote an analysis of the Renaissance. But before that, she wrote a biography of Alessandro de' Medici,
Okay.
the man that Lorenzino murdered. And
Mm-hmm.
with Catherine, we have Stefano Dall'Aglio from Ca' Foscari, who, as I said, is this guy who did this amazing piece of research that turned everybody's idea on its head about what actually happened with that assassination. So what we're going to do the three of us, is take people through this murder. First of all, the murder in Florence of Alessandro, and then the night that Lorenzino died. And we know
Mm-hmm.
exactly the way that happened because the guy who murdered him wrote it all down. He
Wow.
has a first-hand account. We know that he walked out of this house in the Campo San Polo. We know he walked down towards what is now the Goldoni Museum, where his
Uh-huh.
mistress then lived. And we know that he got to the little Ponte Santa Mar and then they pounced. So we're going to take through people this amazing story that began one January night in Florence when Alessandro was murdered and ended when Lorenzino got whacked on the
Wow.
Santa Mar. So it's a fascinating story. Now,
Cool.
after that, and it's a non-fiction, you see. I mean,
Mhm.
everybody thinks noir is about just fiction. No,
Sometimes life is it's
absolutely.
crazy
I mean,
than
and Venice
fiction.
is such a great city for noir because it is a city of light and dark. I was just
Mm,
thinking,
yeah.
if you really want to know about Venice noir, go into the Accademia and find the painting by Tintoretto, Cain and Abel. So a
Mm,
stunning painting where you have the two brothers, the sons of Adam and Eve, and one's killing the other because he thought God loved him more.
hmm
That is absolutely Venice Noir to me. But the second session will be Gregory chairing
hmm
a discussion of historical crime fiction. And his authors are Anna Matzela, who is English but of Italian heritage and has
hmm
written some fabulous books. One is set in the Rome of 1938, and a most recent one, which is The House of Whispers, is sorry, The House of Whispers is the one set in Rome, and The Book of Secrets is the one that's set in Rome in about the 17th century, and
Uh-huh.
it's about mysterious things going on in a nunnery. And then with Anna, we have Matteo Struckel, who's an Italian author, who's written many books, big seller in Italian, and his books have been historical and featured Casanova, among
hmm
other things. And then the third session is simply about crime fiction in Italy. And that will be Paul Burke, who's the editor of Crime Time here,
hmm
interviewing Philip Gwyn Jones and Tom Benjamin. To
Cool.
that, there will be signings around the actual, excuse me, there'll be signings around the actual event. But I think after that, we'll probably all retire over to Studium, which is just over the bridge,
Uh-huh.
have a chat there, and perhaps
And,
some
and collapse after that. Very,
collapse
very
after that. And
busy.
after that, I will just go home and collapse until I think the following morning we'll have to have a discussion about 2025.
Yeah, so you're gonna
That's
have
it.
to
That's
start
the
planning.
program at the moment. But I
Cool.
would ask people to just register. It costs you nothing to
Yeah,
get
yeah,
the
yeah.
updates because we are looking at adding a few little extras on the side.
Uh-huh.
Can't talk about at the moment because I'm not actually fixed. It's August, everybody's on holiday.
Yeah, of course, of course, of course. But it's amazing. I really hope this is gonna turn into something regular and in something also bigger because this is only one afternoon. But if it was like a 2 or 3 days event, oh, I can imagine. I mean, the immense I mean, the number of authors that could come and talk, and it's not just about Venice, but about Italy anyway. But about setting. There's so many books that are set in Venice, and not just in Italian and in English, also in French, Spanish, and whatever. It will be amazing, and I think it's something that Venice really needs. We're opening, I notice, more and more bookshops And I
Yes.
wonder why, because the Italians are not well known for being big readers. Okay.
Mm.
But turns out that we keep opening more and more bookshop. And I got to say, Libreria Studium is one of my favorite. I presented my book there twice already, so I know it's beautiful. Listen, what's the biggest challenges that you face when you write about Venice?
Oh, actually, picking the right idea. I mean, the problem with Venice is there are so many things you could write about. I mean, every time I come back, I've got a notebook full of ideas, and it's, well, how do you choose which is the right one to run with? I mean, people often say, where do you get your inspiration? And really, in Venice, there's never any shortage of inspiration. The place is just full of stories, uh,
Hmm.
full of little bits of sparks of inspiration that could just begin something. So it, it's not hard. I mean, the hard bit is actually just saying, right, this is the one I'm going to go for, and focusing on that. But you have to have, I think when you write a book, you have to have a target. So my most recent book is called The Borgia Portrait.
Mhm.
And what I wanted to do with that was to set a puzzle book in
Mm.
which the answers to the riddles were things in Venice itself. So
Mm.
you have my lead character, this Arnold Clover, is trying to help this young woman who's being defrauded of her legacy, which is a palazzo on the Grand Canal.
Mhm.
And in order to get what she wants, they have to unlock a riddle that was left by her late mother, apparently.
Mhm.
And it's all to do with very obscure locations and places
Mm.
in Venice. So I had to set out and find some really obscure things. And Gregory, as always, very kindly read the manuscript afterwards.
Mhm.
And I said to him, and he's lived here for, very decades. And I said to him, how did you actually get the answers to the riddles without finding them in the book? And he said only about half. He said
Oh,
some of them are
interesting.
completely new to him. So there are some very obscure things that I found great fun to find. It involved a
Cool.
lot
And it must be
of
cool also
talking.
for the readers if they come to Venice, because they can use it like a treasure hunt book to go and
Yeah,
find
yeah.
the real hidden Venice.
Oh, well,
And,
no, I've got readers who are saying, I've found it now, and I've done a video. There's a kind of spoiler video that I put up on YouTube, which
uh-huh.
actually tells people where these places are.
No,
But
you
the big,
shouldn't. You shouldn't. That way they got to work hard. They got to stay in Venice at least a week to find everything.
yeah, yeah, well, it'd take them longer than that. But
Oh,
there is a big notice at the front saying this is a spoiler. Do it after you read the book. But I
uh-huh.
didn't put a map in the book.
Okay.
So I didn't want to do that. So they would still have to work to find them.
Yeah, but see, that is one way to. I always say if people read more about Venice and they did a bit more research, and when they found book like yours where that gives, like for example, I don't want to name a very famous book that was written about Venice that gave a totally wrong information. Okay,
Yeah.
it was turned into a film too, so I'm not gonna go any further. But there were so many wrong information about Venice, and people coming to Venice and looking for these places that don't actually exist in Venice. And
Mm.
that bugs me because I think, for crying out loud, if people did it like you, where you actually put the real places, then people will really go and look and go out of a beaten path and try to find these places and discover the real Venice, as they say.
Well, that's true, but a lot of people aren't really interested in real Venice. When I flew out this
Um,
time, there was this chap on the plane next to me who was coming for 2 days, and I said, "What are you going to do? What are you going to see? You're going to go to the Piazza San Marco?" And he said, "What's the Piazza San Marco?" And he said,
even
"I said the only thing we got planned is a gondola ride."
no
I was
way.
like, "Well, And a lot of these people go away saying, I didn't really like it. They see the Piazza San Marco, they see the Rialto, they see a gondola ride, they go to a terrible restaurant near the
Yeah,
piazza,
yeah,
and they go away saying Venice is rubbish.
yeah. Because
I,
they
I mean,
they,
I
they
find that
do.
a lot. I don't know if you've heard people say that, but
I try to avoid people,
yeah,
if you know what I'm saying. And I'm lucky that people that come in my tours or speak to me or follow my podcast generally are lovers of Venice. But yes, I realize that are people I do.
Well, you have to
Uh,
make an effort with Venice. You
yeah,
can't just expect, this is not Disneyland. It's
yeah,
not a resort. It's a living, extraordinary city with the most extraordinary culture and architecture and art. And you can't expect it to entertain you. You've got to go out and find the Venice that you want. And you've got to put
exactly.
some effort into it because if you don't, nothing's going to happen.
Exactly. I always say Venice is not a city that you come to have a nightlife because
No.
everything shuts at about 10, 11. It is a city of good food, but you need to make an effort. You cannot just expect, pizza, pasta, and gelato. That's not Venice, what it's all about. But I totally agree with you. And that's what I'm saying. I think the problem at the moment is, the city is not, let's say, is not, I don't want to use the wrong word as in Sally, but I'll say it's not showing himself as he should. Okay,
Mm.
from the point of view of the authority, there isn't the right propaganda, there isn't the right information about what the city is all about, and the Instagrammers do the rest.
Yeah. Yeah.
Unfortunately,
Well, you see
listen.
these crowds, I mean, wandering down the Strada Nova, they're
Yeah,
just blocking everywhere around the Rialto. And yeah, I just think, well, why are you actually here? What is it that's brought you in? I think it's because it's become a place for people to tick off, to say, oh, I've done Venice. I went there for
yeah.
2 days, I did a gondola ride. And that's all they're interested in. And, you can't be snobbish about it and say, you can't come if you're not interested in the art. But I do wonder how much they really get out of the place.
Yes. Well, they don't. They don't. Very few do, unfortunately. And I repeat, I think for me is a question of we need to work on before people come. Once they're here, it's hard to change. But before they come, a lot can be done, should be done.
Mm.
What I want to know from you is how does Venice arts, its music, the architecture influence the stories that you write?
Oh, I'm not sure it actually influences the books so much. I mean, the thing I find fascinating about Venice, I normally stay in an apartment near San Pantalone,
Mm.
so it's quite local and it's not actually on the tourist track. So I
Oh,
see
absolutely
people
no.
and we recognize one another. We say buongiorno, when we're having a coffee or something.
Mm-hmm.
The thing that strikes me most about Venice that makes it uniquely friendly is the fact that there is no transport other than walking and a vaporetto. There are no
Mm.
cars, there are no bikes. So everything has to be done on that slow local level. Now, I find that just fascinating from a sociological point of view, but from a writer's point of view, it's incredibly useful if you want to write that kind of book because you can't have a car chase in Venice. Nothing can happen terribly quickly.
Yeah,
You,
that's so true. That's so
you can't go
true.
for this Mission Impossible thing, the James Bond thing, speedboats.
Ah, forget about it. It's all
It's
fake. So
ridiculous.
fake.
It's not going to happen. It's not going to happen. So that means that you have to, as a writer, focus on the characters you've got and the world they inhabit.
Yes.
And it's a world that is absolutely unlike any other on the planet because the people can take the wrong turning and end up in a dead end alley that there's a canal at the end of it. They can so very easily get lost. They can be walking along and just suddenly realize, actually, this is the very spot where Lorenzino de Medici got whacked. I mean, there is so much context
Yes.
here that you have to build that world up. And it has to be, for me, it has to be like a real world of Venice, not, I mean, I've never had anybody take a gondola ride in any book I've ever written here because, no offense to gondoliers, but it's just, I don't find that side of things interesting. I very rarely write anything that's set in the Piazza San Marco unless it's relevant to the story. And the same
Uh-huh.
Rialto, I'm not writing a tourist postcard. I'm not writing a travel guide. I'm
Of
trying to
course.
record what I feel is the real city,
Uh-huh.
this very unusual city, and the people who live there. So that's what shapes it all. It's not the actual architecture, not so much. I mean, in the Borgia portrait, there's this spooky palazzo at the heart of it, which this young woman feels she should inherit, and that is based on Caderio, the
Hmm.
spooky real
Hmm.
life one that has an amazing history on the Grand Canal in Dorsoduro. So occasionally I'll pull something out like that, but I don't want to make it. It's not like the Stones of Venice. These are meant to be, mainstream fiction narratives. So
Hmm.
I don't want to get sort of sidetracked by that.
Hmm. How have the readers responded to your portrayal of Venice?
Very well. I mean, I seem to have quite a good faithful readership around the world. If you write a book that's set in Venice, there are people who will read every book that's set in Venice. Equally, there are people who will say, I don't want to read books that aren't set in outside England or America.
Mm. Hmm.
So there are very few novelists, Donna Leon's one, um, Camilleri was another, who can write Italian books that go mainstream worldwide. And I'm very aware when I'm writing a Venice book that it is a specialist book.
Hmm.
I'm not that kind of interested in writing mainstream thrillers where there's a death every other page
Yeah, yeah,
and
yeah, yeah.
artificial hook.
In a city where until 5 or 6 years ago, if it was a murder, it was like, whoa.
Yeah,
Now
yeah.
it's happening more frequently. But let's say before it was like, really a murder in Venice. It was like everybody knew everybody. So yeah, I get that. So have you received any feedback from Venetians?
Oh yes, yeah, yeah. Very nice feedback. I mean, it's interesting. I mean, Studium are very good at carrying my books, um, but also I was just in there talking to them the other day, and a lot of Italians have expressed interest in Venice Noir as well. So,
Mm.
I think we are getting there. I have been published in Italian. The current books aren't published in Italian, and my Italian agent tells me that Italian publishers don't really like books set in Italy that are written by non-Italians. There's not so much to do with the book.
I thought I never understood this. Isn't it funny how so many Italian writers write about New York, about London, and then don't live there, but then we don't accept foreigners writing about Italy. Isn't it funny how we
It is
just
odd. It is odd. I mean, she was very surprised that the Garden of Angels didn't sell here because, that was actually pre-read by a couple of Italian friends of mine,
Mhm,
both of whom went through it and said, this reads like an Italian book. And it's been published in Germany, done very, very well in Germany.
mhm.
So it is odd, but it's publishing. There's not a lot you can do about it, but maybe
Mhm.
one day, maybe one day.
It's funny. I always find it very weird, this thing, particularly. I mean, I understand sometimes that, because we're worried people will not write the way, well, I don't know. I think Italians are not very good at taking critics. That's probably what it is.
Yeah,
Okay.
but I mean, Dan Brown got translated into Italian, and some of the stuff he wrote, I just thought,
Yeah, exactly. But that's what I'm
what can
saying.
you
But I
say,
didn't
really?
want to. That's book I was referring to
All
before.
right,
I mean,
yeah. But I
there
can't,
was.
the guy sells millions and millions of books,
I
so
know, but
he's not doing anything wrong. But in
so many
terms
things
of,
about Venice were so wrong.
no, no,
I'm not so sure about the other cities, but definitely
no.
about Venice. I was like, whoa, stop
It's
there.
something you can't take seriously. I mean, like the Indiana Jones episode where he comes out of these mysterious tunnels,
Yeah, it's like,
appears through a flagstone in the Campo San Barnaba. I
I
mean,
know.
you can't take that seriously. You can't be offended by that. But when people try to be serious and it's absolutely
Yes.
ridiculous, I think that's a
Yeah.
bit different.
Yeah, of course. So have you got any other book in the making set in Venice at the moment?
I'm working on one for maybe probably September 2025, which will be the third book in the series featuring this um, sort of retired English archivist called Arnold Clover,
Mm-hmm.
who started off with the Medici murders and the Borgia portrait. So I'm working on that now, although my next book is actually set in England. It's set in Dover in 1940.
Oh,
And that will
interesting.
be out in November. That's a very different kind of thing. And it's
Oh,
kind of a companion.
set in the Second World War then.
Yeah,
Nice,
it's
interesting.
kind of a companion piece to the Garden of Angels because while there is a kind of mystery at the heart of it's about what war does to people. how it can change them for good and for bad, and how the dividing line between good and bad can be very hazy at times. So that's my next one. That's all
Mm.
finished and going into production now.
Mm.
For the one
Cool.
after that, I will be back in Venice.
Ah,
Can't
see,
wait.
that's the excuses you use that you got to write books. That's the excuses you use to come back to Venice, isn't it?
Yeah, well, even when I wasn't writing books that were set in Venice, I used to come to Venice to do the final edit.
Mm.
Because something happens when you're there and there's no, the outside world can vanish.
Mm.
I found it an absolutely great place to just work. So
Mm.
yeah, I've been doing that for like 15 years. It was always a place traditionally where I would come to actually finish the book.
Right. So, what's your ideal day in Venice then when you come over generally?
My ideal day,
Mm.
I don't know. I probably work in the morning, go out, have some cicchetti for lunch. Depending on the weather or what's going on, go back, do a bit more work, meet a friend, go and see something in the afternoon, and then that's it really. I mean, I'm
Mm.
quite lazy. I mean, yeah, I was there for 8 days on this last one. I went to see the new reopened Carrot Sonico, which was
Mm.
fascinating. They've done a fantastic job there, and I met up with a few friends. I went over to Lido for lunch. It was very hot, so you weren't you know what
Yeah.
it's like. You're not actually going to be terribly active.
Yeah.
And the apartment has wonderful air conditioning, so
Why would you want to go out with
exactly.
35 degrees and 85, 90% humidity? Why would you? You
But I
know,
also like it in January. I mean, January is one of my favorite months.
I know.
When it's empty.
I keep telling people that they need to come in winter, and I totally understand that the weather is not great,
No,
but
but I mean,
it's still good.
January is often, short days, very bright and sunny.
I know.
Um,
It's a special light, special skies in
mm,
winter here in Venice that, honest to God, I've never seen anywhere else in the world. It's just
mm. And I love that
crispy.
race down the Grand Canal on the Befana, the Regatta di Befana.
Yeah,
That
yeah,
is fantastic. I mean, where
yeah.
else? Where else can you see old guys dressed as witches having a boat race towards a giant sock? I mean,
I know, I know.
that is so Venetian. You've
Uh,
got to see that for once. That's
Listen,
more fun than any gondola ride.
well, absolutely. Since you've been to Venice so many times, what's your favorite cicchetto then?
Sorry, my favorite.
Cicchetto.
Oh, I think that would have to be bacala. It's
Oh,
good.
you're my
It's
man,
good.
man. Okay, okay, okay.
It's good. It's not always good.
Points went up all of a sudden. Your points went up like woo to the sky. Good,
No,
good, good.
bacala. I mean, again, where else could you get something like that? Nowhere.
I
But it
know.
does vary. It does. I have noticed it varies in quality from place to place.
Oh my God, are you kidding me?
Mm.
Absolutely. I can. My next book, actually, I should have a book on grading the best bacala in Venice, and literally, as a researcher, go to each single place and makes bacala and make a list of the best ones because
Oh,
it's
that sounds like very hard work.
huge difference.
Bacala and sardine and sour, I love. And yeah, I mean, a good fegato alla veneziana, again, that varies
Yes.
enormously in quality.
And less and less people, unfortunately, make it because it's one of the things that, unfortunately, Venice is losing is these traditional dishes because they're
Yeah.
losing out to pizza and pasta and gelato, as I keep saying.
Mm.
Okay. So when is the Venice Noir happening and where can people register and where can they find all the information?
It is on October the 17th this year and runs from 3 p.m. to 7 p.m. in Sant'Apollonia, which is this conference center just behind the Bridge of Sighs. And they can find out everything they need to know at venicenoir.com. But please just sign up for the free newsletter so that we can tell you what may be added over the coming weeks and just
Mhm.
keep you up to date with what's going on. But you don't, it'd probably be a good idea to register to say, look, I'm going to come along.
Yeah.
We've no idea how many people are going to turn up. I think the place can take up to 200.
Okay.
So I can't imagine we're going to get 200. I've no idea how many
Hey,
we're going
you never know. If Monica
to.
start making a bit of a noise, probably you would.
You never know. You never know. But it's free. It's free, and it'll be, it's going to be very informal. So the authors, will do the presentation. Then we'll be around for a chat afterwards, It's just we just want it to be a nice, personal,
Cool.
enjoyable event.
Cool. And where can people find you instead?
You mean
In the social medias? Social medias.
Oh, social media. Well, you've got my
website and social media. Yeah.
My website is davidhewson.com, and you can find me on X and on Threads as David_Hewson. And I'm on Instagram under the same name as well. I have to say, I don't use Instagram that much. I'm kind of on Facebook, but I don't really understand the Facebook. It just seems horribly complicated.
You're more of and I refuse to use the word X. You're a Twitter person. You're one of the original ones, like me.
Yeah. I was on Twitter since 2007. It's sad to see the way it goes, but I have to say, I'm very careful about who I block and who I watch, and I still find it incredibly useful.
Yes.
And while, lots of things go on there that I don't like, I tend not to see them.
Yes.
Threads has come along as well, but people can get me there anyway, all through the website.
Good. Oh, David, it was so nice talking to you. And I hope next time, finally, well, I'm definitely coming to the festival, but I definitely hope finally we're going to get a drink together, because you keep coming, we keep missing each other from one way or another. And also because you're staying in Sant'Apollonia, you definitely got to come and drink a Cinico at Sbarleffo. Come on, it's the drink to be tried. Forget about the spritz.
Right.
I know you're a spritz person, but trust me.
Oh no, I'll drink anything. I mean,
like Philip, so I'll drink anything.
We're not proud. But we'll do that, and and I will see you in October.
Yes,
I look forward to seeing your list of the places to eat bacala.
Oh, definitely got to do that. You're the second person that asked me this, so I'm definitely gonna have to start writing a book about this. Okay. Speak to you soon.
To you, Monica.
And thank you again for talking to us. Ciao.
Anytime.
Ciao.
Ciao.
Thank you again, David, for talking to us. You can find David at www.davidhewson.com and on all social medias as David Hewson. And then you can find the festival at www.venicenoir.com. Thank you again for listening. Venice Talks podcast is a production of Sentire Media, created, produced and hosted by me, Monica Cesarato. Follow Venice Talks wherever you get your podcast, and if you want to book a food tour or a cooking experience with me, you can find me over at www.monicacesarato.com and on all social medias with the handle at Monica Cesarato, where you can follow my adventures around Venice. And don't forget, if you love this episode, please rate it and leave a review. It's very much appreciated.
Sentire Media.
Hey, podcast producers and show hosts. Do you want to join a podcast network that celebrates all things Italian? At Sentire Media, we understand the allure of Italy and its unique culture. Our devoted team of hosts and producers are all driven by their shared passion for Italy. And we work tirelessly to create the best lifestyle podcasts and content that will whisk you away to the very heart of Italy. With us, you can savor the mouth-watering flavors, get lost in the stories from the past, break down the cultural barriers, and truly immerse yourself in the vibrant traditions of this intoxicating country. If you have a great podcast idea or are already in production and would like to join Sentire Media, head over to sentiremedia.com, that's SENTIRE media.com, and find out how to submit your show.